Before we begin today's episode, I want to offer a content warning. This conversation contains personal stories and discussions around sexual abuse, sexual trauma, and healing. While it is shared with the intention of empowerment, inspiration, education, and awareness, it may bring up strong emotions or memories for some listeners. Please take care of yourself as you listen. Pause if you need to, come back later, or skip this episode entirely if you feel too activated. Your nervous system always comes first. This podcast is not a substitute for therapy or medical support. If you are currently in a crisis or need immediate help, please reach out to a mental health professional or trauma-informed support line in your area. You are not alone. You are not broken. And your healing matters. Now, let's dive into today's episode. You are listening to the Unleashed and Aligned podcast, where we strip away the noise, unleash our truth, and align with our highest self. I'm your host, Felicia Dom, certified life coach, Reiki practitioner, and chakra guide, here to help women find deep love and interconnection within themselves. This podcast is here to increase awareness, inspire your journey. Welcome back to the Unleashed and Aligned podcast. If you have been listening for a while, then you remember Nicki Brown, who was our guest on the incredible episode titled Burnout to Reclamation, Healing Through Authenticity and Nervous System Alignment. That episode for me really sparked feeling safe, seen, and inspired by her story and her wisdom. Today, Nicki is returning for our special August theme, Sexual Abuse and Assault Awareness. This is a deeply important conversation, and I'm so honored to have your voice here with us, Nicki, guiding us through this. For those of you who don't know Nicki, she is a women's healing and empowerment coach. She is trauma-informed and trained by a somatic psychotherapist and certified in the Mastery Method. She specializes in helping women root into safety, softness, and self-reclamation, which is exactly what we need more of in this world. Welcome back to the podcast, Nicki, and thank you for trusting and allowing me to speak on such a vulnerable yet such an important topic today.
Thank you for having me, and I'm really happy to be here and help share some awareness and some insights today.
So to start, would you be open to sharing a little bit about your story, whatever
Yeah.
feels right around your experience and the path that brought you to where you are today?
Yeah, so I think for me, I really always like to give the context of my growing up because I think that really shapes everyone, right? Most of the things that we believe about the world and the way that we see and operate in the world, it's all formed before like the age of 7, 8. It's formed at a really young age. And so for me, I grew up really conditioned to be the good girl and the people pleaser because that's how I learned to receive a sense of love and appreciation and recognition. Like that's how I learned to be seen and to be loved. And I have no blame for my parents. Like they did the best they could and they were doing a really great job with their own upbringing and their experience. But there was a lot of ways in which I really grew to like outsource my own inner knowing, or because I believed that I was wrong or naive or bad in some way. I wanted to just be good and to achieve. And as I grew up being molded in this way, it led me to pursuing a university degree in something that didn't feel aligned for me. Truthfully, I wanted to be a psychologist, and my parents convinced me that I would burn out if I pursued that kind of career because I was too sensitive, too soft. And so I was pushed into political science. And so I decided to go away for school because I felt like, oh, this is a way that I can maybe get some freedom myself and figure out who I am in this process. And so I went away and I pursued this degree. And during the time that I was away in college, I was really unhappy because I wasn't really connected to what I was learning in a lot of ways. And I was, of course, doing a lot of the typical things that people do in college when they get their first bit of freedom after like years of living under someone's thumb. I was a little bit rebellious in some ways, like partying and drinking and just not not really connected to myself yet because I didn't really know who that was. And through that experience, I was when I was with some friends one night, I got left at a bar by myself because a friend of mine was sick and they couldn't find me. And so I was left at a bar by myself. And when I was trying to find my way home at the end of the night, I trusted somebody that I shouldn't have, someone who my instincts were screaming like, no, this is unsafe, but who made me feel like triggered in that moment of, oh, don't be rude. And so I was like, oh no, I have to be the good girl. I have to be a certain way to be palatable or to be liked. And that was more important to me in that moment than trusting myself. And that got me into a situation that I ended up sexually assaulted. And through that process, I developed even more self doubt because after finally getting the courage, maybe some would say too late, like days later, to finally come forward, it was too late to collect evidence. And then there was like a bit of a he said, she said situation that led to a lot of victim blaming. And I felt like, oh no, it's me. I'm wrong. I did something wrong. Like I somehow misled this person, or I somehow, and I felt for a long time that although some people would say, oh no, like no matter what you did, you didn't deserve that. I didn't feel that in me. I
Mhm.
felt that like logically, but I didn't feel it in my being. Like I still felt like I was wrong. I was bad, that I somehow brought that on myself. And it took a lot of years of doing healing work later to find that place of like self forgiveness and actually letting go of that. But I didn't realize how, for a long time, on some level, that shame really ruled me and changed the way that I operated in my life from that trauma.
Thank you for speaking on your story and allowing us to have an idea of what happened and going through that. I wanted to touch on a couple things because I think that they're so important, and I am glad that you brought them up. One of them is that people pleasing. Another one is the shame. Another one is going against your instincts. And I really, really think that it's important for the listeners to hear, especially for any of the young listeners to hear, is how people pleasing can really get you into situations like this, in the fact that you're going against what you're, and I've had this experience too, where I'm going against my natural instinct because in some sense you're either one trying to just be nice and you're just like, oh, I don't want to be rude, or 2, sometimes it's everybody likes this person, so they must be fine, so I'm gonna ignore these signs that my brain's saying
Exactly.
because yeah, it's, "Oh, everybody thinks that they're cool, so it must be me. I
Right.
can't be mean to this person, or I can't say no to this person," or something like that, because then it's gonna be a sign that there's something wrong with me because everybody else seems to like them,
Right.
and I think those
Yeah.
are so important to listen to because it happens to so many of us, like, especially younger women, where we can get caught in that. And then the aftermath of that, having that shame and that self-guilt, I've had the same experience where it's you feel you're like and this might not be for everybody, but this is what happened to me, is like like thinking back in my head, replaying back in my head of what did I do? What did I wear? What did I say? How did they get that from how I'm being?
Right.
And
That
so I
self-blame, self-shame for sure starts to like you start to overanalyze everything you did thinking about how you created that for yourself or you brought that on to yourself.
Yeah, yeah, and then you, almost then start coinciding with the person that actually did the thing. You're like, "Oh, they're right. I was wearing that outfit wrong," or "I
Right.
did say the thing," or whatever that is, and like I said, this is not for everybody that has something going on, but I think that these things are so important for us to pay attention to and look within and acknowledge if we're doing that, even if we're doing it subtly in friendships or with family, we're not really stating how we feel and what we mean and paying attention to that as early as possible and noticing those signs of us not listening within and looking at the other people or the world around us to tell us how we're supposed to be or how we're supposed to show up.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, can you share a little bit of how your own healing journey informed your decision to focus on how you help women with today?
Yeah. So honestly, that experience, as painful as it was the first point in my life that on some level I did start like stopping and asking myself, wait a minute, like, how did I get here? How did I get into this situation? And yes, there was a lot of like blame and shame and like judgment towards myself, but there was also like a why did I, what m- motivated me to ignore my gut instinct? Like I started actually like asking those questions, like, why did I ignore my gut instinct? Or why did I feel like I had to be nice? Or why did I think I had to say yes? Or like what was driving my like actions or decisions? So it was the first time where I really started to look at like why was I doing the things that I was doing? And also like how did I get into this place? Like literally, what are all the things that led
Yeah.
me to this moment where now I'm like I had this my life felt shattered in that moment. Like everything that I thought was all of a sudden like different. And I think that was the moment where I just started to ask myself, is this really where you want to be? Do you want to stay here? Because at that point I started to not feel safe. But there was part of me that was like, no, I have to finish this degree. This is your parents are paying, helping you pay for school to like, because they weren't paying for me, but they were helping me like pay for school to get a degree. It was important to them and they wanted me to pursue that. And I had agreed to do, you know what I mean? I was
Mhm.
like, I felt this like obligation to be there and like I couldn't let this ruin my life or whatever. But I also didn't feel safe in that space. And so I took a lot of time to reflect and decide, is there a way that I can shift my direction in life? So I started with shifting my degree and I started to say, can I use these credits to apply to something that feels more aligned to me? And I shifted into international development degree. And that actually led me to go back home where it was like safe to finish my degree at a different school. And then in between that, I had this sort of experience where I was like, you know what? I'm not going to let this hold me back. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life feeling scared and unsafe. And so I need to find a way to reclaim my independence and my like sense of self. And so that actually led me to Spain. I applied to be an au pair for 3 months in between degrees. And that was like that trip was part of me like starting to learn about myself and reclaim my sense of safety, like going out alone and like being alone and starting to build a new identity. And it was really, it wasn't really a time where I did any of the work to heal in some ways, but I started to really make my own decisions and reclaim a sense of independence and ownership over my life. And that was a big thing. And when I finished that degree in international development, I actually got accepted for an internship in a really rural, remote part of Kenya. And that's where everything, like the wheels came off the bus for me in terms of trauma. Because when I went there, there was a trusted advisor for us on the ground that was supposed to be the chief's son and he kept joking that he was gonna sell me for cattle. And one joke, okay, but after a second joke, I'm like and I started to realize that I was in a situation where if I was in trouble or hurt or something, like, I might not be able to call anyone for help. I wouldn't be able to tell them where I am. Like, I'm really rural, remote in the middle of nowhere. I could literally just disappear, and I couldn't unknow or unfeel that because the moment I had that realization, it started to bring everything back up again and this, like, feeling of, like, unsafety and I can't trust anybody, and I just was so I could not regain my ground and my sense of safety. So I left. I left that program really early and I came back just feeling defeated and shattered. That's what led me to a corporate job, which eventually, through my career, I ended up in a place of burnout because it wasn't aligned with me. And that's when I finally started to discover the personal development work and the coaching. But before that, I had started to do some of the healing around the sexual assault trauma.
You mentioned having this sense of like safety taken away and not being able to feel that grounded. And I think for so many survivors of sexual trauma, even identifying with that safety, let alone feeling it, is overwhelming. What are some of the ways that you were able to, or if you have any like little things that you would do daily, what was it like to try and reclaim that back?
Yeah. So for me, what I learned about safety much later was really tied to the nervous system. It was such a big thing for me that I didn't know for most of my life. It's really interesting that now it's becoming much more, I don't want to say trendy, like more mainstream.
Yeah.
There's a lot more awareness about it. But for a long time, like, a lot of people didn't understand
Mm.
that our body literally reacts to a memory of something. There are memories that kind of get stored within the body, and the body reacts before the mind and brain and all these things, which is why a lot of times we feel like out of control or like we have these knee-jerk reactions that we're like, "Oh, I didn't mean to," because
Mhm.
the body is also reacting. And so I think from that experience, I had a lot of chronic low level stress that was living under the surface. And it showed up in ways where I thought that I had healed. Like I talked about it, I accepted it. I was like over, like on a mental level, I worked through it and I had healed it. But like on another level, I still recognized in hindsight that I hadn't really processed it somatically in my body. Like I hadn't felt that experience of safety in my body from that point. And so I felt like I was really reactive to a lot of little things. Like I had a really small window of tolerance. Minor stressors could like really just send me over the edge. I had a really overactive mind and brain that was just like constantly searching for, and some of this, like I recognize in hindsight, I had a high sensitivity growing up. So, like some of these things, I think I already had a higher set system.
Yeah.
I
Your baseline was already up
but
there.
exactly. My baseline was a little bit like, different than other people's might be from the start, I think. But that experience really shortened my window of like tolerance for stressors. And so really little things could easily bump me outside of that window where now all of a sudden I'm in a state of fight or flight or freeze.
Yeah.
And so those are the experiences that I was having in my life, like little things like stressors for work or too many people like trying to get my attention at once. I would feel like really like overwhelmed, trying to do too many things at once. I would be like, oh my gosh, I can't, I just need. And so it was really like little things that seemed to push me over the edge a lot. And I felt like there was something wrong with me
Mm.
because of those things. Like, why am I so reactive? Why can't I get a grip on myself? Why do other people seem to handle things better than me? So much judgment and shame towards myself for like feeling like I couldn't handle life and not realizing that so much of it had nothing to do with my ability to handle life, but my inability to deal with the experiences that I had that were making me feel unsafe and knowing how to actually process that and feel safe again so that I didn't react that way. Learning how to feel that in my body. And some of that was through much later, like I said, the work to understand the nervous system. And so knowing different techniques to take me out of stress. The biggest one of which is like breathing exercises. And like I always, for my whole life, was like, that can't be very effective. Like I always brushed aside, that's not effective. How is breathing supposed to help me? Not realizing that how closely tied the breath is to activating like that parasympathetic nervous system, which helps calm and put us into that rest and digest state or that ability for us to feel like safe again.
Yeah,
And
I love that.
breathing was a big part of it and learning to listen to myself and my body, which I would override before, like I said.
Yeah. So, can you walk us a little bit through what your journey was like in listening to your body? Because I think a lot of times it's definitely easier said than done for sure. But did you just start paying attention, or did you have a plan of when this happens, I'm going to really be processing it? Or how did that even look to get started?
So I have to say, at first, I didn't have a plan. Before I started really learning about the nervous system, I was just learning about tools to calm myself. And I thought it was like mindfulness. I didn't make the association so much with the breath back then, but I started using some of those tools, especially when I was interested in coaching. Initially, I did a health coaching certification. And one of the tools that they used was this breath work. And I was like, "Oh, this is really helpful. Why did I just shut this down for so many years?" And so that was really helpful and, like, also eating because my digestion and, like, things like that. So, like, I was ignoring my body signals. And so, like, that health coaching certification, which I did to start to try and develop healthier habits for myself, was really what helped me because at first I really did think, "Oh, there's something wrong with me. Maybe it's because 'cause I'm so unhealthy." And so I started to, like, try and be healthier, and the breath work was part of it and learning to eat properly and slow down. So those really simple practices started to really help me regulate. Learning, like, for example, like, to eat more protein and, like, things like that. Just food-related stuff that I never would have made associations with helping me feel well overall and giving my body what it needs to, like, maintain a level of regulation. But then it was my practice became more about, like, how do I notice when I'm being triggered? Starting to create moments of, like, awareness and looking underneath and then trying to figure out what was happening there. "Oh, why am I reacting this way? Okay, I don't feel safe." I'm like, "What's the story I'm telling myself?" Okay, so the story I'm telling myself is, like, this, and that's making me feel unsafe. And then I know that's not true. So trying to talk myself off a ledge. This is how it started, like trying to talk myself off of my like ego ledge and back into don't worry about this thing or don't like it's okay, you're safe. And I didn't realize at the time how fundamental that
Yeah.
action was to like helping me recognize moments of unsafety and create awareness around it so that I could take action and reaffirm myself. Over time, I developed those tools more and like fine tuned those to like work better. But those were the ways that I initially started to like work with it that were helping on some level.
I love that you are diving into all these things that you're looking to be healthier in general, and they all go together. But I love that you are using these tools that a lot of coaches use, maybe just in a not so structured way at first. And as you became more aware of like coaching and stuff, you developed like a better structure and plan and all that. But I love that you were already doing all of the work in kind of a different avenue, but it all, like you said, reconnects us within ourselves and within our bodies, and you start to develop those awareness tools more and more.
Yeah, I do think because originally I didn't start off trying to become a coach, right? I started
Yeah.
off trying to fix what was wrong with me. I was very reactive, especially when I had my daughter. My identity was shifting and all these things were happening. And I felt like life just got too much. Like I couldn't, there was too much stress. There was too many things that were just like bumping me outside of my comfort zone and outside of my window of tolerance. And I just couldn't deal. And I was like, there's something wrong with me. I need to fix it. Maybe it's because I'm unhealthy. And I started trying to work on myself to figure out what was wrong. And I realized that some of those tools, when as I was going through that and applying them to myself, I was, oh, this is really helpful. Oh yeah, this does really work. Oh, I didn't realize that I needed to balance my like protein, like balance my plate, eat less carbs and more protein and fiber and things like that. And then I started to like work out more and I was like, oh, I didn't realize how good this is for mental health and like getting some of that anxious energy out. I started to make these like connections with how they were helping me. And I really developed like this interest in approaching my health and well being holistically. And so that's when I started to bring in tools like looking at my beliefs about certain things because I realized, oh, okay, now my mindset is like really it's really terrible. There's all these beliefs about myself that are underneath that are triggering me and things like that. And so it was like that onion, like layer by layer. I started working through these things. And when it started to really work on myself, that's when I went all in and I was like, I need to help other people with this.
Yeah, and I think so many coaches, it's like that first layer is our inner work and how it helped us so much, and that's when we've dived in and said, "Oh my gosh, we gotta send this to the masses because this is amazing." And I
Right.
love that you've gone through all the steps and really dived in to so many different avenues and know so many different ways to really be healthy overall. And so if somebody that's listening is carrying some maybe unspoken shame or trauma, which I think that it's also good to note that not everybody, but if you seem like you're very easily triggered and you're feeling overwhelmed a lot, it is a nice reminder to take a step back and say, okay, what's going on internally that's making me react this way. So I think that that's really something that I want everybody to pay attention to when they're listening to this, because I think that's such a good reminder that there might be something deeper. I think a lot of people just say, oh, that's just how I am, or
That's right. And it's so interesting. It's people always think, oh, that's just how I am. We forget that's how we've been conditioned to be. Like naturally,
Mhm.
no one is anything, right? We all come into this world as babies without that conditioning and this whole nature versus nurture debate. I'm sure there's lots of people who are going to weigh in differently on the subject either way. But regardless of what you believe, just because something is how you've been, it doesn't mean it's how you need to be, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
mean it can't.
Yeah, and that's so important. It doesn't mean that it's something that you can't be changed, because I definitely see that with either people that are quick to anger, people that are always stressed out or whatever. It's just like that's and I had that. Like I'm somebody that like waits till the last minute and then I'm like super productive because I like crunch time and I'm like that's just how I operate. That's just how I work. That's how I work better. And it's really that point where I have to stop and be like, okay, well, w what actually is going on in my brain that's making me think that's when I'm productive. But it's just a great reminder to notice, is there something behind the surface? Is there some unspoken, like, shame or trauma that's underneath that we need to look at a little deeper? And so thank you for saying the words that you said, because I think it's so good for all of us to hear. If somebody is listening and they have something that they're carrying, maybe unspoken trauma, unspoken shame, is there some type of words that you wanna say that, or maybe a practice that you think would be the most helpful for them right now?
Yeah. So one of the things I always say to do with my clients, because I feel like this was a really big turning point for me, and it's something that I feel is like one of the least talked about, most underrated forms of healing, and that's self forgiveness.
Mm.
I think that I had so much judgment, and like shame is really about that judgment, right? There's things that we're judging about ourselves because we think they make us bad or wrong or whatever, or we regret when we act in ways that were not aligned with who we wanted to be, right? And so I always recommend this process of self-forgiveness, compassionate self-forgiveness, because I think that it is such a powerful healing tool. We don't realize how liberating it is to like truly recognize our patterns and our behavior from a place of compassion, to
Mhm.
recognize that there's like a part of us that was like unhealed or wounded, injured, the small part of us that like maybe had a misunderstanding or didn't have a better coping mechanism. Like truly every single pattern, habit that we have comes from a place of good intention, right? Like we develop these habits and these patterns from a place of self protection and survival and desire to meet our needs. And we don't have a better way to do it until we do, until we learn, until we
Mm.
know better. And so to forgive all of the things that we've done in our past, all the things that might have gotten us into bad situations or we thought painted us in a bad light, all the things that we try and hide or shame within ourselves, to forgive all of those parts of ourselves and learn to love those parts of ourselves for the innocent and misunderstood ways that they're behaving.
Yeah.
And when you do that, I find that process is so healing because you stop feeling like there's something wrong with you and you start just seeing yourself as a human with
Yes.
needs and who deserves compassion.
Yes, I just have to reiterate something that you said because I think it's so beneficial, and I wanna make sure that the listeners hear it. You said, "You don't know a better way until you know a better way," and I know that's so simple, but it's so powerful, and it's so true to almost get a weight off of your chest and a relief because I think so many of us, myself included, is always thinking, "Oh, I should have known that," or "I should have known better. I shouldn't have did that." Hindsight's 2020, but in the moments, there's this sense of we don't go through the experience, yet we should have already known the
Right.
outcomes. And I think it's such a good reminder for us that, yeah, we're doing our best and our nervous system is doing our best and our body and our mind is doing exactly what it knows to do in order for us to have the best situation that we can, that it thinks that would be the safest until we learn more and understand more about ourselves, more about our brain, more about our nervous system and take the tools to then be able to support ourselves in the way that we want to. And even then, there's going to be better ways and more information, and it's never going to end. And we're constantly learning new things. And so it's always an evolution journey. And to not beat yourself up, like you said, that self forgiveness and understanding. And if you're starting right now, that's the best time to start.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to agree with that. I truly think that everything that happened in my life led me to the point where I was able to do the work that I did when I was ready. There were so many things that when I look back in hindsight, I was like, if I had right after the experience of sexual assault, if I had tried to do this work, I wouldn't have been ready. So I think everything that's part of our healing journey happens when we're ready to embrace it. There were things that I learned even years ago that I wasn't ready to implement until now, until this past year. And so, like things that I knew, but I couldn't apply it or execute on that until I was like ready to really take that step. And so, I think it's just really important to release any guilt or shame that comes from that as well. At the same time, recognizing that, like, sometimes we do have to act before we're ready, but we do need to be conscious of the nervous system because until we're ready to care for that part of ourselves, it's going to be hard to really move forward. And so that's why I just want to recommend that if anyone does have trauma that they're carrying around, big T trauma that they don't know how to deal with, or that they might not have the tools to deal with, to get the support and to look for somebody who can also help you on the nervous system side of things. Because I think that those body based tools are such a solid foundation for the real healing work that needs to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Such a good point to honor your body, know that it is a process that maybe we have to step into an uncomfortable side to reclaim that empowerment back into our lives.
Mhm.
And I think that it is when you're ready, but also making that choice that, okay, I'm ready, even if I'm y- still having this stuff in my head, I'm ready to look and seek that help.
Right.
And I think that's such good advice.
Yeah, I think it's just so important because going back to what I was saying before about not realizing where I was like pushing through or like overriding my own intuition. And so I feel like developing that can be really helpful to know, am I really ready or not? Because there's always going to be any fear about things that make you feel uncomfortable or uncertain. But like your heart or like your higher wisdom knows if you feel pulled to get but
Mhm.
are scared, there's a difference between being afraid and not being ready. You can be afraid and move forward. But if part of you feels ready or pushed or called to get that support and deal with it, then like trust that part of you.
Yes, yes. So, what does reclamation look like for you today in this chapter of your life? And how do you continue to return to yourself even when maybe old wounds resurface?
Yeah. So I look at reclamation really in a different way now than I think I ever did before. I'm so focused on, because I've done a lot of the different work to really focus on reclaiming like my identity and the parts of myself. Now I look at that reclamation more on like a macro scale for me personally, in terms of this idea of returning to my nature, like this, my natural way of being. And what I mean by that is like when I feel like the need to push harder or override my like body's natural rhythms or what I feel to be true in my heart because my logic wants to override that. I think of that more as like the reclamation, like those subtle ways that I'm like, oh no, like my wisdom, my natural state of being, like my embodied self knows what is best for me. And so I think of it more of cutting out some of the noise that exists in the modern world that tries to distract me and pull my attention. So when I notice when I'm feeling like more disconnected because maybe the morning was really busy and I didn't have time to connect with myself in the morning, but that's part of my daily practice. I notice that I'm feeling a little bit more ungrounded. And so it's like being able to like consciously notice that ungrounding and like reclaim that natural part of me that needs to feel connected to myself and my body. So things like that I think of as more self reclamation now. But before that, I was a lot about like identity and just realizing, who am I? Who is this human being? Shedding a lot of the roles and things like that I identified with when people ask, when you first meet people and they ask, "Oh, what do you do?" And you're always inclined to say, "Oh, I'm a coach and I'm a mom and I'm in this role and I'm in that role." And I started like making a conscious effort to frame my identity around all of those things that are not tied to a role. So reminding myself on a regular basis, I had a process called the Identity Manifesto, which I created as an affirmation that I read to myself every morning about the kind of person I am. Not the roles that I played, but the person that I am. You
Oh,
know,
I
like
love
I'm the
that.
kind of person who cares really deeply about these things, who acts in these ways because it's what felt aligned to me, who values this thing and that thing. This is who I am. I am a collection of my joy and my values and my heart, that what it wants to do in this world, like my creativity and what I want to bring, like those things, like that is who I am. And so just reclaiming those pieces of myself outside of the structures and the roles that we live in.
I love the identity manifesto. That's an amazing thing. I'm going to start one. I think that's such a great thing to read out loud to yourself in the mornings and have that reminder throughout the day, especially when you're in situations that maybe can bring on more of the saboteur archetypes within your brain.
Because so much of what we do is grounded in our identity. Like our
Yeah.
identity naturally leads how we operate in this world. And so that's why, for example, when I was like doing the healing work or when I was trying to be healthy, I had affirmations that like I am the type of person who prioritizes her health, who moves her body from a place of joy and not judgment.
Yeah.
These are the moments of the reclamation of the self. This is the kind of person I am. I'm not like the person who works out or is a fitness guru or like shedding like these ideas of like people that we have to be or roles that we have to play or identities that we have to fit into and just like affirming the type of person that I want to be and
Yeah.
having my actions be an extension of that.
I love that. I love that. This conversation has been so powerful, and it's such a powerful reminder that healing really isn't about erasing the past. It's about returning to yourself again and again with softness and with safety and with the truth that you're worthy and your wholeness. So I am so thankful that you've returned to my podcast. It's always such a pleasure. Nikki, you have such amazing, beautiful energy. So
Thank
thank
you.
you for sharing this story with us.
Thank you so much. So happy to be here.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review so that we can connect with more people to develop our mind, body, and spirit.